Tēnā tātou te whānau, nau mai hoki mai to the Planting Seeds podcast. This is the first time we've had a session outdoors, as the brother would say, the Forest Kingdom. So just want to introduce our next guest on the show, and very, very humbled to have this man sitting with us, and I'll allow him to introduce himself. So take it away, brother.
What's up, guys? First off, bro, thanks for having me, man. Like, this is amazing what you're doing, spreading this message, spreading the awareness. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Wynyard, and I am a spiritual life coach. And yeah, this is my place. This beautiful Forest Kingdom.
The Forest Kingdom, all right. And it's so nice because, like, when we look out, we just see so much inspiration, right? There's so much nature. You got everything sort of happening here, bro, and it must be helping you so much, like, on your own journey, just to be fully inspired, to be grateful. All of those values that we need in life is sort of like, it's right here. It's right here for you. So how does it make you feel, bro, just being in this space and walking in the space that you're in?
Oh, it's amazing, bro. Like, what I do is I run an online business. So we work with literally thousands of people from around the world, and the main thing that we focus on helping people with is healing. So healing trauma, releasing suppressed emotions, and really helping them to tap into their highest self, their highest purpose, their highest power. And when you're doing this kind of work, it's a lot of energy that's required. So I have to show up as my higher self, and I have to work with these energies all the time and help people go through these massive healing processes. And every time I help a client, every time I'm on a coaching call or I'm doing a webinar or something, and I'm helping these people through their traumas, indirectly I'm helping myself. I'm healing myself, because we're all connected, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm a big believer that the trauma and the emotion that you might hold in your body, I hold it within my body as well, within my consciousness. So whenever I'm helping a client go through their stuff, I'm healing something within myself. That can be draining it sometimes. So the reason why I manifested this beautiful place here is because it's so important to be able to give yourself time to recharge the spiritual batteries. You know what I mean? The recharge your energy. So, I mean, just being out here, raises the vibration. So, bro, I love it, man. It's like beautiful here.
That's awesome, bro, because I can definitely relate in some capacity when you're in a space of service, when you're in a space of trying to add value and help people on their own journey to find their purpose, their calling, or help navigate them to finding out who they really are. And that is quite energy taxing. And quite often when you're in this space, in this movement, people are sort of looking to you for guidance. But quite often when we see people in these leadership sort of positions, sometimes we sort of get into the space where we feel isolated. When we're in service, like, we look around like, who the hell is helping us?
Yep.
Right? So how do you sort of like process through that space? Where do you find your recharge? Like, we've said this in this way, but sometimes we're not conscious of that, eh? So what's your process, bro?
That's an amazing question, bro. And yeah, like, just going off what you said, there's a quote that I always use, which is, in order to be able to give to others, we have to first fill our own cup and give to others from the overflow. We can't give from an empty cup, right? So the way I fill my cup is, I'm very blessed to have a really positive tribe around me. So, I've got, and it's not that many people, but I've just got, like, some key people in my life that are on the same frequency. And whenever I feel like I'm drained, or if I feel like I'm not in a position to fully help myself, which most of the time I am, I've gotten to a point where I'm really able to take control most of the time, but not all the time, obviously. Then I'll reach out to some of the people that I look up to, some of the people that are able to, like, hold space for me and offer me some form of feedback or guidance from a place of love. And that's so important to have those people in your life, man. Like, there's been points where I've been at, like, rock bottom, and I was not tuned into my higher self. I wasn't tuned into the universe at that specific moment. And there's been those key people, like those, like your soul tribe, right? Like what we're doing right now. Like, we're going to learn so much from having this conversation. So it's just having those positive people around you, that positive team. I've got mentors and coaches and spiritual teachers that I work with whenever I need the guidance, whether it's in the business entrepreneur route, or whether it's in my own spiritual journey. You know, I've got those teammates there for me when I need them. Eh?
Awesome, brother.
Yeah.
That's so important, and I rock with you on that because, yeah, you just need that top up, you know. And my outsource or outlet to get recharged is just definitely having thought-provoking conversations, just ringing mates like, what do you think about this? I'm processing this at the moment. Do you have any further thoughts? Or sometimes it just comes when you're in tune, right? You know what you need. Sometimes you don't even have to put it out physically. But when you're vibing on the frequency of someone else, they in tune with you, they just tend to reach out. And, you know, you share those sort of videos all the time. And just before we carry on further, bro, like, there's a different language when we're talking about spirituality. We talk about frequency, we talk about vibration, we talk about universe, we talk about alignment, right? These are sort of like the words that are commonly used in this space. I just want to let you know, bro, like, have the freedom to talk in your language, right? Don't feel like you need to double down, because I know that's your truth. And the people who are listening to this, you're going to sort of like try and piece these words to the context that you're in. But just got to allow the brother to speak in the way that he does, and we'll just try and communicate things that is relatable to all. So before we do get further into that, bro, like, how did this all start for you? Because obviously you just didn't wake up and just be an enlightenment sort of human being. There was obviously a process, because you fall into this, because it sort of takes dark moments to really open up. So what's been your journey so far?
That's like a whole retreat's worth of content right there, bro. But to break it down, to summarize it, really from the moment I was born, bro. You know, when I was born into a lot of a very abusive environment. So there was a lot of trauma from like the moment I came here. Even before I was born, there would have been trauma around you know, my mum as she was carrying me in her belly, in her puku, right? So because I was born into like a very challenging environment, a very traumatic environment, there was a lot of abuse, there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of emotional abuse, psychological abuse. The first 5 or 6 years of my life, we were on the run. We're living in women's refuges all around the country. So because I went through that, and because my mum, I really bring it all down to my mum. She was very, very spiritual, very, very in tune, and she was planting seeds from a very young age, bro. Very, very young age. You know, she taught me how to heal from a very young age. So from the moment I could like walk and talk and speak, I was like praying for her, speaking in tongues, all of these things that I just thought were normal. I didn't really second guess it. Like it was just something that I was raised with, right? And then as I grew older, I kind of strayed away from that side of life, and I think it really came down to just the way society is kind of structured, right? So like when you go to school, none of that stuff's talked about, so I didn't talk about it, you know, because I thought I was like, you know, no one else was talking about it. And then, you know, as you get older, like we kind of get programmed to believe what is the right thing to focus on. So, and that comes a lot down to like the education system and the way that we've been kind of raised. So like, I just completely kind of forgot about it. It was always there, but I completely forgot about it. Anyway, fast forwarding through till my teenage years, because I didn't grow up with my father, I had a lot of undealt with trauma, a lot of suppressed emotion, a lot of anger. And whenever you have a man or a young man that has been raised without the masculine leader in his life, there is a tendency to build a rebellious nature. And that was me. I was like the definition of that. So I built this rebellious nature, and I was just acting wild for my whole teenage years, you know, getting into fights, drinking, doing drugs, running away from home, lying to my mom, you know, just doing all the wrong things, bro. And basically it got to a point where I dropped out of high school, didn't want to do it anymore. And then I left high school. I left high school, and then I ended up running away from home. That was around the age of 17. And for about a year, I was essentially homeless. Like I didn't have a place to live, but I was just staying at people's houses and stuff like that. And then after about a year of that, I kind of realized that the world was evolving without me. and I realized that I was living in a victim mindset. So I was not taking responsibility for what was going on, and I was blaming my current circumstances on the education system, on my family, on my dad's lack of presence, my my friend circle. I was just putting all the blame onto everyone else, right? Not taking responsibility. And then it got to a point after a year, I was like, wait a second, this is my responsibility. So that's when I decided to learn all of the things that my mum taught me, and all the seeds that she planted, manifestation, the healing, the law of attraction, like all of those universal laws. It all came back to me, and I was like, okay, cool. I need to start practicing this again. And then as soon as I went back to that part of myself, my life transformed literally within a space of like 3 or 4 months. I went from, doing drugs every day, homeless, no direction, no job, no money, no purpose, no passion. 3 months later, I was traveling the world as like a fitness coach, traveled to over 24 different countries within the space of like 3 or 4 months.
Right.
So I put all of those tools that I'd learned into practice. So I've always had I've always been tuned in, and I've always been tapped into that spiritual part of myself, the soul, the spirit, the higher self, the universal self, whatever it is, whatever words resonate with the listener. But where the real awakening started to come, the real when the real power started to shine through, the real purpose started to shine through, was in some of my darkest days, which was later on, a few years later, after those what I was talking about before, and that was when my mum actually got cancer. So she got cancer, and she got sick, and I had to literally watch her for 2 years. I watched her degenerate from this like wise spiritual teacher that she was, full of love, full of compassion, and I watched her deteriorate into someone that wasn't even able to speak or even able to recognize my face. And I had to witness that, and I had to like live that for like 2 years straight. Now, during those 2 years, because I didn't know I didn't have the tools at the time to deal with the emotion or to deal with the trauma that I was currently going through, I did what most other people do, which is I just like put up my walls, put up my shields, put on that suit of armor, and I pretended like everything was all good. And I did a really good job of it. I built a 6-figure business, multiple 6 figures. I had hundreds of clients from around the world at this point. I was in an amazing relationship, had the car, was living in an amazing apartment. I had everything going for me. Everything was great. But my depression and my anxiety and my anger was like the highest it's ever been in my entire life. And in that moment, I realized that happiness and love and joy, all of these elevated emotions that we seek in life, they're not to be found in the external world. Right? You can have all the money in the world, you can have all the cars, whatever, you can have an amazing relationship, but if there's something that's not right within yourself, you're not gonna be able to fully embrace life for what it actually is. So she passed away, and then basically that was when the awakening process started, because I was filled with a lot of like anger. I was raised as a Christian, and so I had this relationship with God from a very young age. As I got older, I started to like kind of stray away from more of like the religious aspects, but I always kept that personal relationship with what I called God at the time, right? So up until this point when my mum passed away, I got very angry at God. I got angry at him or her or it, because why did you let my mom, like why did you let the teacher, like why did you let the light in my life degenerate like this, and why didn't you save her? Because I was praying every day, praying for her to get better, praying for her to heal, and she just didn't get better. And then she passed away. So I was filled with this anger, and then it got to a point where I was like, you know what? This is all this like God spirituality stuff. It's all bullshit. I'm done with it. I'm done. And then I like blocked it off completely. And then a few months later, 3 or 4 months later, one of my friends came back, who was also very similar to me, very, quite ego-driven, very masculine man. He came back from overseas, and he was just like a completely different person. Very enlightened, very relaxed, very peaceful, very calm. And I started to hang out with him and match his frequencies, and I started to learn some of the tools that he was teaching me, diving deeper into meditation, deeper into breath work and stuff like this. And then one day I had this profound spiritual experience where I was in this deep breathwork session. It was like a 90-minute breathwork session, and I had this full out-of-body experience. And I was taken out of my body, and I was able to see my entire life from the moment that I was born to where I was now, all the way up into the future. And I was able to see all of the aspects of myself, all of the emotion, all of the trauma, all the ego. I could see it all. I could see the higher self. I could see every single aspect of myself in this higher dimensional state. And in that moment, it became very, very clear to me that, there's so much more to life than what we have been told. and that was coming from someone that's been spiritual my entire life. So when that happened, that's when I came out of that experience with like this huge release, it was like forgiveness of the self, the emotion, the trauma, the anger. It was all like released, and I felt like not just the emotional release, but the physical release from the muscular system. And then I felt different. For about a month after that process, I was literally on a high, like all the time. Like I was seeing like colors everywhere, like the trees were like speaking to me, like animals were speaking to me. I was seeing numbers everywhere. It was like I was just like had tapped into this new dimension, and I wanted to know what was going on. Right. So that's when the truth seeking began. Like, and that's when that's when I actually started to walk the spiritual path, because I just wanted to know, okay, what was that I experienced? What am I feeling right now? What did I let go of in that experience? And I wanted to know more. And that's when I started to learn more I started to dive into all of the ancient teachings from all around the world. I started to research into all these ancient methodologies, practicing them, and then just deepening my knowing and understanding of this like infinite wisdom that we have access to. And it's been a non-stop journey ever since, bro.
Sounds like it's just been one heck of a journey, bro. And thank you for sharing that and taking us all on that journey of your past, of your story, of your truth. And, I think it's so true, like what you said, it sometimes takes us to really have the courage to sort of look at our past, what I've been through, what our story actually is, and just think about those significant moments that have happened. Like whether it's trauma from a young age, whether it's someone passing, whether it's losing a relationship, whether it's being homeless, all of those types of things are what I feel are building character.
100%.
These are all the checkpoints that we have in our life until we arrive to a new race. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And the new race is like trying to tap into that infinite intelligence, trying to not only live fully in the moment, but do that consistently, right? Because like we were talking earlier, sometimes we just get tapped into this autopilot, and you said we operate either out of fear or love, right? So what's this in-between bit? Is there in-between? Do we call that the hamster wheel of life? Do we call that, what is that bit?
That's an amazing question, bro. And I think with that kind of question, there's so many different ways you can answer it, so many different perspectives. There's a universal law that I learned from one of the ancient teachers, Hermes Trismegistus. He was a Greek god, the god of wisdom. He was also named Thoth by the Egyptians. It was the same deity, but just in different translations. And he, thousands and thousands of years ago, he came up with a series of universal laws, right? And one of the laws is the law of polarity. And what this states is that every single thing in this universe has an opposite pole, right? So you've got good and bad, right? You've got light and dark. You've got positive and negative, love and hate, masculine and feminine, waves and particles, ones and zeros, everything has got the polar opposite, hot and cold. So from my understanding to the question that you guys asked, there are just different varying degrees of certain ends of the pole, right? So you've got love and hate, where you've got the highest frequency of love that you're able to experience, and you've got the deepest, darkest hate, but it's not two separate things. It's just two ends of the same thing.
Same thing,
The same
right?
thing. And within that space between, there is really no way to differentiate what the difference is, because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's when does cold become hot? At what point do you differentiate? Okay, it's cold, now it's hot.
Right.
There's so much. It's like a big blurred line between the two opposite ends. But I think the most important thing to realize is that they're neither good or bad, right? When you start to see things from like a completely higher perspective, it's no longer positive or negative, good or bad, evil and good. Those are just the meanings that we give it. Right? They're just two ends of the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So we are the ones that say this is a bad experience. I should not be going through this experience. That is our own meaning that we give it.
Yeah.
And because we give the meaning to the thing, it becomes that. All right. And when you start to understand that law, that's when you can really start to hack life in a way, because when you are experiencing a so-called negative experience, all you need to realize is you're just giving it meaning. You're giving the negative experience meaning, and you have the ability consciously to transmutate that. You can go from one end of the pole to the other simply by focusing. On the other.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, bro, that's honestly mean. Even just saying that there's negative, positive, but it's not one or the other. It's exactly the same thing. It's sort of like, when we talk about the universe or when we talk about God, and you said he, she, or it, but God is just being, and I think for us, just as humans, as a consciousness, I feel, we do attach too much things, and I think that's just our minds
It's the mind that tries to understand. It's the logical mind that tries to quantify and make sense of. And I've had a lot of really, really interesting conversations with religious people and scientific people, atheists, about this kind of stuff. And I love having these conversations because I'm always coming from a place of just offering perspective. I'm never trying to change people's perspective. Right. I'm just trying to offer a different one if it's needed at the time. And I think when it comes to a lot of people that become very identified with belief systems, or identified with names or words or whatever, that identification is a part of the ego, right? And the ego is the persona that we walk around, and the person that we pretend to be. And within that ego, within that persona, we use the logical mind to try and make sense of things. Right. So you can get someone, right? There's been many people that walk this planet. They've been able to tap into this infinite source, and when they experience this infinite source, right, or the higher power, the universe, God, again, whatever word resonates, whenever the person experiences it, what they do is then they use their logical mind, and then they use language to try and interpretate. You're going to get people, right, and this goes for everyone, this goes for every single person. We're going to have some profound experiences in our life. Some people who seek the profound experiences will have more profound experiences. But when they have the experience, when they're able to tap into this infinite source, God, universe, whatever, they're going to try and interpret their experience, right? So they're going to use everything that they've learned up until that point in their life to try and understand what they just experienced. They're going to use words, they're going to use language, they're going to take words from other people to try and make sense of it, and then they're going to come out of the cave and they're going to be like, I just spoke with God, right? Or I just saw the source of the universe, or whatever it is that they say. And I think even trying to explain what the infinite is in itself takes away from what it actually is.
Yeah,
you know
right.
What I mean?
Yeah.
So it's I think there's nothing wrong with the logical mind. It's a beautiful part of the being, but it's just a tool. And right. I think the problem with, not the problem, but the current challenge that we're facing in society is that we're so identified with the logical mind, and even more so controlled by the logical mind. And that's when the depression, the anxiety, the overthinking, and all of these problems that we're facing at the moment come from.
Yeah, 100%, bro. our mind is definitely controlling a lot of the choices and a lot of the things that we do make in our day-to-day lives. But I think when we sort of tap into spirituality, we sort of get this term woke. That's the word that's commonly thrown around now, because when you tap into consciousness, or when you tap into this space of trying to be an enlightenment being, I think you start to actually become so much more aware, where you gain control of what you're seeing and what you interpret that experience to be.
Yes.
Whereas at the moment, when we're under this controlled space, or the current issue that you are sort of saying, is there's just a lack of awareness.
Yeah.
And I feel in order for us to really move the needle forward in terms of our individual sort of lives, but also as a society, as a country, as the world, if there was a global shift, like, wow, like how amazing would that be?
And I think that's exactly what's happening right now, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're doing right now wouldn't have been done 100 years ago,
Right.
because we would, as a collective consciousness, we wouldn't have been at the level of being able to even really understand what we're talking about.
But is that even possible? Especially like when we're just talking about the universal law of polarity, like not everyone can be conscious. Everyone sort of has sort of like a role to play,
Yes.
for how we're living. But
Yep.
there's also that sort of hope of like, man, because you just want the best for everyone, right?
Yes.
But our best doesn't necessarily mean that that's their best. That's just their sort of journey through this life
Yep.
experience, right?
Yes, 100%. And again, so many different ways to like dive into this conversation. And I think what you said is right, bro. Everyone plays a part, and it's really hard to see it from this perspective. But let's look at the example of like war, for example, right? War is not something that war in countries, war in relationships, conflict in general. It's not something that we can perceive as to be a good thing. And like, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to say people killing people is a good thing, right? Because it's not. From our perspective, from a higher perspective, from that. That bird's eye perspective. From one perspective, you could say that all of this war is helping people build compassion. And if it wasn't for the killing, then we wouldn't be building compassion, and we wouldn't be having these collective triggers within ourselves, and we wouldn't be trying to do something about it, right?
Right.
So sometimes like you said, going back to the personal journey, the spiritual journey, sometimes it takes those traumas in our life for us to see the light, because you can't go to one end of the pole if you haven't been to the other.
Exactly.
So if you go to the darkest of the darkest of the dark aspects of your life, or the darkest aspects of yourself, then you can actually find the lightest aspects of yourself. And I think the same goes for humanity as a whole. So I think we're in this really interesting phase where, as a collective consciousness, the whole race is evolving consciously. And I think the next level of evolution is through technology, and it's through consciousness. I think those are the two main timelines that are popping up right now, and that's what is going to propel us to the next level, whatever that is going to be. I don't know. And I think there's been certain races throughout history, that have come close, or even possibly surpassed. When you start looking at ancient civilizations, tens of thousands of years of age, and they've got hieroglyphics of spaceships and technology and all this kind of stuff. It just expands your mind to what is possible. And I think that the more of what we are doing right now, having these conversations, and the more leaders that are being created within, light workers. I like to call them light workers, people that are here to shine the light, to help heal, to help spread the love. The more of those people that can begin to awaken, and the more those people can really shine their light, there's going to be a ripple effect in each individual universe. Or when I say universe, each individual person, right? So I posted a video yesterday about forgiveness, and it was all about forgiving my father for what he has done in my life. And I got intuitively called to do this video because I knew that if I was able to stand on camera, be super vulnerable, and forgive my father for all the things that he's done and has done up until this point in my life, then people are gonna see that, and people are gonna recognize that same resentment that they hold within themselves towards whoever is in their reality, and they're gonna see that it's okay to forgive, and let go just because they witnessed me doing that. So by me shining my light, it's helping people let go and then raise the frequency within themselves, and then they can shine their light, and then their family and their tribe is going to be directly impacted by that. It's going to plant seeds within all those people's minds, and then it's like a ripple effect throughout the whole of humanity. So I think the more leaders, light working leaders that we can create, and the more of our warriors that we can build up and help heal, then a new world or a new earth, of higher frequency is possible.
And like, I think the thing that I just sort of thought about when you said more light workers being created, I think it's not about creating light workers, it's just about helping them remember,
exactly.
Because
exactly.
Everything is all within us. It's just how do we sort of create frameworks or create that sort of bridge to help people tap into their own sort of story. And like, when you're talking about the ripple effect, then we think about, questions like, what is your legacy? That is legit my legacy. I want to be able to be that stone that is just dropped in a still lake, because I really do, I 100% sort of resonate with you in that, because that's what sort of helped my journey. The more vulnerable that I became, the more outspoken that I was, and sharing these things through a place of love, it's sort of just elevated everything in my life. I see things differently. I feel a whole lot more like I'm a hard out feeler, so, and just tapping into that, because I feel that's where the presence of the universe and God is. When I feel love, there's we all have those warm fuzzies. Sometimes we get goosebumps. I sort of like try and tap into that when I need that sort of counsel, or when I need that encouragement. So when we're sort of like doubling back to like the questions, bro, what are some of the questions that you ask yourself? Because a lot of people are always searching for the answers, but someone who is really conscious, I feel, asks developed questions. So what are some of the questions that can help people sort of find their way? Or what are some of the things that have worked for you anyway?
That's a great question, bro. I think it comes down to realizing that there are no answers. Actually, let me scale it back. All the answers lie within yourself, right? So a lot of people tend to search outside for the answers, and they'll spend their whole life traveling to different countries, seeking masters, seeking teachers to find the answers, and a lot of the time through that seeking there'll be seeds that are planted that will help them. But I think the most important thing to realize is that whenever you speak to a master, whenever you speak to an enlightened person, or you have these kinds of conversations, everything at the end of the day is realized within the self. So if you say something to me that is very profound, that helps me, it is me who has come to that realization, right? So I think the questions, this is just what I personally do, and I'm not saying that this is the only way. There's infinite ways to go about finding answers. But what I do is I retreat back inside. Whenever I'm seeking, whenever I feel like things are getting a bit much, a bit overwhelmed, because there's stress in my life. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm on this journey just like everyone else, and whenever I feel like there's too much going on, I retreat back within the self, and I will breathe, and I'll get myself to that just calm, neutral point, not too on this end of the pole, not too much on that end of the pole. Just bring myself back to the center point, breathe, and then once I'm in this calm state, I will ask the question that I'm seeking the answer for. And the beautiful thing about being a spiritual being in a physical body is we can do that, and the answer will come, usually straight away. And that's what we all have the ability to do. So what I'll do is, like, for example, I'll just go within and I'll ask, what do I need to do? I request an answer. What do I need to do in this aspect of my life? Whether it's business, relationships, with my son, life things, I'll just ask the question. And usually, boom, it's right there. And if it doesn't come straight away, it'll come in the form of manifestation in the outside world. So maybe that day I might see an article and the article was like speaking directly to me. It's answering that question. Or I might run into someone and the conversation that I'm having with that person is exact, like that person's talking about what I was asking about earlier that day in my meditation, right? Or maybe a book comes along and the book has all the answers that I need because I requested it, because I actually asked it. But I think a lot of people are searching for the answers, but they don't really know what answers they're searching for.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the key. Knowing what you want, knowing what you need to know, knowing the answer that you know, knowing the question, knowing what question that you have, knowing what you want in life, and then just following it, asking it, going out there and seeking it, and it will always be there. Whatever intention that you set, it's always going to come to you. But you have to go out and set the intention.
And you have to set that sort of like clarity, You have to be sort of clear, you have to be specific of what it is that you're asking. And for me, like the big questions that started to sort of like change the course of my life, that shifted tides for me, was like, what the heck am I up to with my life? You know, who am I?
Yeah.
You know, these are like the big questions. And, you know, when you start to ask these big questions, you know, you're forced to sort of go within. And I was just talking with Israel, who was on the podcast, and a lot of people are afraid of that. A lot of people are afraid of going within because there is just so much, not just planted trauma, deep-rooted trauma.
Yes.
Right? So how do we sort of become comfortable in self to then ask those questions, those big questions, because we don't ask them because there's just, we don't know what's going to come up.
Yeah, man. That's a massive question, and that's one of the big, I think, challenges that we're facing right now that we, I think, as a society need to put more importance on. Because the fact that so many people are afraid of going within themselves, man, like I remember what it was like to be like that, and there's a lot of suffering when you live like that because you're afraid of your own reflection. Right? Because if you're afraid of going within yourself, that means you're afraid of yourself. You're afraid of an aspect of yourself. There's a terminology that one of the great psychologists, what's his name, Carl Jung, used, which he referred to the shadow self, right? Yeah. So there's these aspects of the shadow. The shadow self is like all of the parts of you that are not conscious. So they're all within the subconscious mind. And like you said, this could be from experiences that we've been through from the moment that we're born. It could be when we were in the fetus. And if you want to go even deeper, it could be within our DNA. You know, it's like generational. You know, and I think we experience a lot of that. You know, for a lot of the indigenous races have a lot of generational trauma in the DNA that's passed down, and it comes up. It's activated. You know, in certain environments. You know, and that's a whole other conversation. But I think the most important thing is when it comes to healing. Okay, you know, I'm very big about healing, helping people heal. And when it comes to healing, Carl Jung said it best. The process of healing is the process of making something unconscious and making it conscious, shining light on the dark. Consciousness is light, unconsciousness is dark when we're looking at that polarity. So when you shine light upon something, it is uncomfortable. And I think when someone is going into that journey within the self, there needs to be some kind of guide or some kind of coach or some kind of mentor that can assure them that it's going to be uncomfortable, but realize that when you shine light on the dark, when you make the unconscious conscious, you're going to feel it. There's going to be this there's going to be pain, there's going to be discomfort, there's going to be memories that come up, and you're going to cry, you're going to be angry, whatever that discomfort is. But realize that is a purging process. So the purging is when you allow it to come up, and when you allow it to come up, and you're ready for it to come up, realize that through that process you are letting go. That is how you let go. The only way to let go is to make conscious of. So when you can do that, and then you can release it, there's some studies around psychology that show that emotional, when you bring up an emotion and you're feeling that discomfort and the tears and the crying, in its purest form, when you're reliving like a trauma or something like that, the emotional process is only around 20 to 30 minutes. So it's not going to be like that forever. And I think we're afraid of feeling it because we feel like, oh, I'm gonna die, or like there's all these like stories that start playing out in our mind. But once you bring it up, it's made conscious now, and then you can learn the lessons associated with it, and then you can actually let it go. But you can't let something go if it's in the dark, if you're not willing to pick it up.
Yeah, far out, bro. That's such a awesome sort of way to look at it, because there was another thing that I heard, and his name is Father Richard Raw. I've actually sort of referenced him heaps, and he's an amazing man. He's a minister. He's been celibate. He's been a minister since his teenage years. But he says this thing that if you're not willing to transform, it transmits. You know, so when we sort of like got all this pain or the suffering that we're feeling, if we don't take ownership in dealing with that, when we have children, that is then transmitted down to them. It's sort of like what you're saying. I think our parents' sort of generation, they've got the grunt of all of that intergenerational trauma that sort of happens from way back in colonization.
Yes.
You know, when you're sort of ripped off your land, when you're ripped off your language, all of these types of things, that they got the bad chunk of it. So I think what I'm deeply encouraged by is that this generation that we're now in is really starting to shift things. We're starting to deal with trauma. We're starting to see more light workers, as you'd say, and I think a lot of releasing and healing is actually starting to happen. But definitely. I think a group of my friends, we call it when you sing your healing song. You know, when you share your story, you allow other people to sing their song too. You know, and I think when like for myself, it started off to be uncomfortable, to sort of be vulnerable, but now there are certain aspects of my story that I'm completely open to sharing, right? But I'm always challenged in like, what am I not willing to share? And how can I tap back into true vulnerability to keep myself in that process? Because
why am I not willing to share?
Exactly right, because what you said, you're in this victim space, and that was me too. You know, I was uncomfortable where I was actually vulnerable. But as I started to get comfortable with it, it started to become the shield of what was actually happening behind the scene, behind that wall. Because as we breach this comfort, we create a new comfort zone. But how are we always continuing to keep breaching the new comfort zone? You know, because I think when you're in the space of discomfort, you get access to this, you feel yourself evolve.
Yes.
You feel yourself grow.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that I'm really attracted to, but it's also still hard for me at times too.
It is, man. You know? It is. It's not easy work, and it's like the metamorphosis, right?
Yeah.
You're the caterpillar, and you're stuck in this like cocoon, and it's all dark and like slimy, and like you don't even know what's going on, and you feel confused, and then you're like trying to break out, and there's like wings popping out of your back, and like what the fuck is going on? And then all of a sudden like you burst out, and then it's just like transformation, next level. And then, you know, that's kind of what it's like when you go through these big breakthroughs, right? And something that, you know, this is what we do in our program. Like I deal with this stuff like every week with clients, and it's like it's always break down to break through. So you have to go down first. Like you have to go through all those, like you have to go through the breakdown, and then once you're at that like rock bottom point, then you can, if you have the tools, and if you know, if you're willing to go through it, then you can break through, and then you can transform, and then you can become the butterfly. But I think the reason why a lot of people, going back to what the question you asked before, I think the reason why a lot of people aren't willing to do that is because they're just afraid.
Right.
You know,
so you need
afraid.
that safe, you need to be in an environment where they feel safe. So, you know, so having people like yourself who are sort of in the space where you can have an anchor, right? And
I think even more importantly, and like again, going back to what you said about how this generation is changing things, is it needs to be, like, imagine if we were taught this stuff when we were kids. Like, I'm really blessed because I've got a 6-year-old son. He's inside now, and you know, I've taught him. You know, he's been meditating, breathing. You know, I've talked to him about emotions. I've talked to him about emotional transmutation. You know, I've taught him these tools, so that because he's going to go through stuff, right? That's what life is. He's going to go through emotions. But now, because his father told him that you're going to feel some emotion and some pain in life, but when you do, it's okay. You've got the power within you to get through it, and this is how you do it.
Right.
Imagine if we can do that in primary schools, right? That's like game changing for the entire planet. But it's a process to get to that point where it's in the government, and it's there's so much work to be done. But it all starts with us. If we, as leaders, if we can heal ourselves, and if we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and if we can allow ourselves to be uncomfortable, face those truths within ourselves, and express them and learn from them and grow from them and evolve, then we are helping. Again, ripple effect. We're helping everyone.
Right.
We're helping our children. We're helping our friends. We're helping our families. We're helping our clients, our followers, and we just got to and we just got to realize that when we go through our stuff, then it's on everyone.
Right.
It's on
and
everyone.
Bro, for something a bit practical, how, because it's super, there's obviously stages, right? How do you prepare someone, say if they're at home, they're not really open to sort of sharing with someone what they're actually going through. What is actually some processes where they can not go fully down and rip the root, but how can they actually sort of start to acknowledge what they're dealing with and sort of progress from there to actually heal? Is there a step-by-step?
There's a good question, bro. And I've been building frameworks over the last few years and perfecting them, because we work with a lot of clients, and I've been doing a lot of work on myself. So I've come up with a few different processes, and there's a lot of resources out there. You just have to go out and find them. But what I personally do with my clients is, first off, it's just telling them, really making them aware that they have the power to create their own reality. And I think when you tell someone that you can achieve anything in your life if you wanted to, and you give them that little bit of hope, they get a little bit of belief, and you're able to relate with them on a personal level, and they actually accept, oh, actually I can make anything I want. What do I want to create? Because if you can teach someone manifestation, what do you want to manifest in your life? What's something that you would want in your life that you don't currently have right now, that would be cool, that you would like, that would whether that's getting out of debt, whether that's improving your relationship, whether that's getting a job that you enjoy, whether it's strengthening and improving your body, raising your energy, whatever it is, giving them something to work towards. Right, that's the first step. So a really good formula that anyone can do. Anyone watching or listening right now can literally grab a pen and paper and do this exercise. It's so powerful. I've used it to create so many amazing manifestations in my life and heal a lot of aspects of my life as well. It's a 5-step formula, and basically the first step to this formula is before you go through the 5-step formula, you have to look at the area of your life that you're wanting to improve on or transform. Okay, and there's many aspects, so
let's choose money.
So yeah, let's choose money. So
that's where I'm at.
Cool. Me. So what you do, money. So for whoever's watching, pick something: relationships, health and fitness, money, business, whatever, career. You pick the aspect of your life. You pick the pillar. And then step number 1 is writing down all of the things that you don't want, right? Around money. So you don't want to be stressed out by money. You don't want to have to worry about money. You don't want to have to. You don't want to be in debt. You don't want to have money controlling you. The list will go on and on and on. If you're writing this down, guys, let it flow. Everything that comes up, just write it down. This is making the unconscious conscious, right? So bringing it up, because as long as it stays in there, it's going to continue to rule your life. So sure. you have to bring it up, see it, and be like, oh shit, I need to change that one.
Divert.
Yeah, sidestep. So step number 1, write down all of the things, identify all of the things that you don't want in that area of your life. So if it's relationships, you don't want an abusive partner. You don't want someone that cheats on you. You don't want X, Y, and Z. If it's business related, you don't want the business to control you. You don't want to work with people that you don't want to work with. You want to do something that you're passionate about. If it's in
physical.
If it's in the health and fitness, you don't want to be fat. You don't want to be unhealthy. You don't want heart disease. You don't want cancer. You don't want what your parents got. All of those things, right? You write them down. You make it clear, because that is like planting the seed. It's like solidifying the vibration, right? Step number 2 is going a little bit deeper, and then you go to the opposite end of the pole, and you write down all of the things that you do want. Okay, so if you don't want to be in debt, then what do you want instead? You want to be have an overabundance of money. If you don't want money to stress you out, you write down or you identify, I want money to I want to have an abundance of money where there is no stress in my life, right? Or I don't want to be stressed out by money, or I want to have control over money and money not to control me. If it's health and fitness, you can say, I want to be strong, I want to be healthy, I want to have a sustainable lifestyle where I'm able to, look how I want to look and feel how I want to feel. I want to feel energy. I don't want to get tired. I want to have energy all throughout the day. If it's relationships, I want to be in a relationship that's loving. I want to be in a relationship where we are on the same page. I want to be in a relationship where we have
communication.
Yeah, where we can co-create our life. So you're identifying what it is that you want. This is all unspoken most of the time. So people go through their life, they don't identify any of this stuff. So they have no idea what they actually want or what they don't want. Most of the time, they're focusing unconsciously on what they don't want, and they end up manifesting a lot of that for themselves in their life. Step number 3, all right? So you've identified all the things that you don't want. Now you're looking at all the things that you do want. Step number 3 is identifying and clearing the blockages that are preventing you from getting to where you want to be. So if you want to, let's say on the list of things that you do want is, let's say you want to be financially free, you want to have 50K in the bank, you want to have a business that generates, 10K revenue per month, whatever that goal might be. You've got all of these things. What are the limiting beliefs that are preventing you from achieving that? Limiting beliefs are the entry into healing, because those are the stories that we believe.
Right.
So, for example, I don't have what it takes to make $10,000 per month. I would never get 50K in my bank account. Like, it's, money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah. My parents didn't have it. I didn't have it.
My parents didn't have it. I don't have the resources. I don't have the ability to do it. If it's health and fitness, I'm too old, or like, I've got it runs in my family.
Runs in my family. Yeah.
These are all stories. And again, our beliefs create our reality. Our beliefs create our reality, right? So whatever you believe, it's going to become. So if you believe that you're too old to lose weight, then that's the unconscious belief. Then you're going to go throughout your whole life proving to yourself that you're too old to lose weight, right? And that's all unconscious, like you're not meaning to. It's all that autopilot that we're talking about. So what are the beliefs? So you write all of those things down. You write every single one of those limiting beliefs down, okay? And then this is where the powerful stuff starts to happen, is you change the belief, right? So let's say the belief is, I do not have, what would you say one of your money ones is, just off the top of the head?
I just never had any money. I've never had money. And that's
so because you were never raised with an abundance of money, that is why you can't make more of it. Cool. So that's like the old story, right? The old belief. Now what you do is you actually write down a new belief. So even though I wasn't raised with money, I'm breaking this cycle, and I have everything within me to manifest anything that I want in my life.
Yeah.
So you don't have to believe it straight away, but through the power of your conscious mind and your creative mind, you're deciding what the new you're deciding what the new seed is that you're wanting to plant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're digging out the old weeds, and then you're going to the aviary, and then you're finding the seed that you want to plant, and then you plant it. So when you're writing it down, that is within itself a planting of the seed. Doesn't change your life straight away, but the seed will then grow, right?
Yeah, with the right environment, the right actions that you take.
Exactly, and that's step 3, writing down all those limiting beliefs, and that within itself is so much healing around that, because when my clients get to that point in the process, that's when they're like, oh man, like, this happened when I was a kid, this happened when I was, this happened in my last relationship, boom, 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 all these things come up. It all becomes conscious, right? Before, they had no idea that was controlling their life, but now they're like, they can see it, and that metamorphosis begins to happen. Step number 4 is when we start to go into the manifestation techniques, which is breathing. All right, so it's all about getting yourself into a state within yourself, a peaceful Zen-like state, and that can be achieved through many simple techniques.
Right.
Breathing for a few minutes, listening to the sounds of the trees and the birds, looking at a tree and just focusing on the tree, listening to a guided meditation, playing some relaxing music, whatever it needs to be. We have a whole series of meditations and stuff in our program. But getting yourself into a state where you're getting yourself into an alpha to theta brainwave state. So when you're looking at brainwave frequencies, most of the time in waking consciousness, we are in beta brainwave frequency, right? That's like when we're thinking a lot. Right now, we would be in a mid to low level beta because we're having a conversation, we're processing information, a lot of things to take in. When you are in an alpha state, that's when you've breathed for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and you go into that present state where you're just within yourself. There's no real thoughts coming in, infiltrating. You're just real calm, real relaxed. It's kind of like between sleeping and waking. It's kind of like in between state. Very easy to get to. Something that should be taught in schools, I believe. Once you're in that state, you've created like a bridge between your conscious and your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind becomes very suggestible. Okay, when you're in this state, this is when you go back to the second step, and you start to visualize what it is that you actually want. I call it creating a mental movie within your mind. You visualize exactly what you want, right? And like whatever it is, relationship, body, money, business, whatever, you visualize the reality. So as if you're in that reality. That's step number one. Step number two is not just visualizing and seeing it, but actually feeling it. Feeling what it would feel like to be in that environment. This is exactly how I manifested this place. What I would do every single morning is I'll be in my mind, and I'll be creating this image of this exact place, the lake, the jetty, the house, the dog, everything. And not would I just be seeing it, but I would like role play it. So I was like the main character in that mental movie that I was creating, and I was feeling it. Why is that so important? When you feel, when you create that frequency within yourself, that feeling, that emotion, it starts to reprogram your subconscious mind. So you get so excited, you're in love with life because you're living in this mental movie. You get in love with life. You're feeling what it feels like to be surrounded by nature. You're feeling what it feels like to have this just like freedom. Like, how does the freedom feel? It feels liberating. It feels amazing. It feels like stress-free. I can buy anything that I want. Or if it's like health related, you feel energized. You feel strong. You feel lean. You feel, empowered, whatever those feelings are. Those feelings are felt within this body. Okay, so even though you're creating it within your mind, you are using your consciousness to create a feeling that you were not feeling before you went into that meditation.
Right.
What that does is it starts to reprogram your subconscious, because the subconscious mind is connected to the body. So when you do that for whether it's 10 to 15 minutes per day, multiple times per day, your body starts to move in the direction of what you're creating within your mind. Your body starts to act in alignment to what you're creating in your mind, right? That's like a manifestation technique. So step number one, identify what you don't want. Step number two, identify what you do want. Step number three is identify the limiting beliefs and the blockages that are preventing you from getting what you want. Step number four, visualize, think, feel, and be what it is that you're wanting to be, and do that all the time, as often as you can.
Yep.
Morning, night, in the shower, driving, just do it. Feel it, be that person, and then you're going to start to act like that person. You're going to start to act like the person that goes out and makes money. You're going to start to act like the person that is in control of their finances. You're going to start to act like the person that is an amazing speaker. You're going to start to act like a person that looks after their body, right? You're going to start to do that because you're planting that feeling, you're planting that seed within the body. Step number 5 is the key, and I saw you guys talking about this with Israel the other day. Step number 5 is surrender. Remove attachment from the outcome. When you depend on the thing that you need, when you become identified with the thing that you need, you're placing too much expectation on it,
right?
And you're creating potential for disappointment. So, for example, if you're like, I want to make $10,000 by the end of next week, and that's the manifestation. If you're attached to that, and if something doesn't look like it's going your way, your subconscious is going to pick that up as like, it's not working.
Yeah.
Right? Surrender, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And you just have to trust it's going to happen. And then the second part of that fifth step, taking aligned action. Okay? So once you're feeling it, once you've surrendered, you don't need it anymore, but you know that it's coming, you know it's on its way, then you take action in alignment with what it is that you want. And you just go out and do it.
And that's how opportunities present themselves, bro. So honestly, man, just thank you heaps for providing that valuable resource. Like, I'm just sitting there, I'm like, yeah, all right, yeah, I got to do that more often.
It's simple, but honestly, if you do it, it creates instant shifts.
Well, exactly right. Like, because I remember when I first started to get into my journey, meditation was the thing that actually started to get me more in tune with what I actually wanted in life, because you get to a point in life where you just sort of like don't enjoy the person that you are, the circumstances that you're in, and you really got to go to that low point. So it sort of goes, if I don't like this, what do I actually want? And if it's not in your life, it's okay to dream. It's the muscle that we don't use enough of, the part of the brain which is our imagination, right? When we imagine things, like when we look at kids, like look how much imagination they have and how happy they are when they're playing with their bloody cars, or you know, with their Barbies. They just having like so much fun in that space. So you know, I think we just need to tap back into that. And for those of you who are listening, who have made it this far, who haven't really sort of understood this sort of spiritual language, because you know, there's so much things out there like, oh, they're TBGB, like, you know, you just got to action. But there's so many different ways you can walk life, right? This is just a pathway that is just filled with abundance. Just there's a pathway that other people go, where it's just all about action, where it's all about hard work. Whether you're conscious of this or not, it's happening. Right, whether you're aware of it or not, you're creating your pathway.
Exactly.
So thank you for shedding so much light on this space for us all, bro. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I really love the energy. I really love what you're about, you know, the space that you're in, and it really is just a reflection of your nature, bro. So thanks heaps for jumping on this, providing
all
value
good,
for us all. But if you had any last words, Baba, just chuck them in there.
I think the most important thing that people need to know is that everything within your life, everything within your reality, everything that you're experiencing within your universe is 100% your responsibility. And as soon as you take 100% responsibility for how you're feeling, what's in your life, what's showing up in your business, what's showing up in your relationships, what's showing up in any aspect of your life, as soon as you take responsibility for it, then you have the ability to change it. And when you can own that power, man, you can create anything that you want in your life.
Wow, bro, wow. And in November, the 11th of the 11th, myself and the bro are collaborating on a retreat. He's doing it just basically around this area, which is like here. So share a little bit about what that retreat is, bro.
So, yeah. And
actually, before we finish up.
Yeah, so my business, for those of you that don't know, I run a company called the Awaken the Alpha Academy, which is basically a life coaching program really designed to help people tap into to heal aspects of themselves, tap into their soul purpose, tap into their soul mission, and master themselves, master their body, master their mind, master their emotions, so that they can show up in the world as a powerful leader. So we run online courses, online programs, and a big part of our program is our retreats, where we have anywhere between 15 to 30 people travel to New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand, which is where we are now. We've literally, I'm really blessed where I live. I've got like a retreat center just on the other side of this lake right now, and basically we have 3 to 4 days of just deep diving within the self, bringing up any of those blockages, bringing up any of those limiting beliefs, healing those traumas in a safe space, having good food provided by yourself, but also this is just like, I like to call it the vision quest is a phrase that's been used in many different indigenous races around the world, where a spiritual warrior or a truth seeker, which is what we all are at the end of the day, they venture out into the world to in seek of enlightenment. And these retreats that I've created, I've been visualizing it for a long time. It's really about creating an opportunity where we can bring people from around the world to embark on that vision quest, to embark on that hero's journey, to finding and tapping into that self-belief, tapping into that self-empowerment, and most importantly, tapping into that self-love. Because if they can come to that retreat and leave with those 3 keys, man, the ripple effect.
Got the
game
key
strong.
to that lock, brother. So awesome, brother. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I understand, bro. We can legit go on for hours because you
Days.
just raised some bloody topics. I was like, man, we could go into that. But we'll save it for another time because
Yeah,
this
bro.
definitely isn't the last episode, bro. But I appreciate you. I appreciate your wisdom and I appreciate the path that you're on because at the end of the day, we're all arriving at the same destination, brother. So happy to be on this journey with you and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks, bro.
My man. Thank you, everybody. Boom.
Oh, nice, bro. That was mean.
That was on, bro. We went on a journey, man.
Hard.
Holy heck.